Natswitch instant payment systems in Malawi. We are thrilled to have you join us for what promises to be an insightful and engaging session. Today's webinar is part of a series that revisits insights from the instant payment systems case studies that we have in the State of Inclusive Instant Payment Systems report, 2023 report, that is, which is an output of African Nenda's flagship annual research that informs the industry on developments in the retail digital payments landscape. Before we dive into the session, I'd like to mention a couple of important points. Firstly, this session has three main parts, which comprise a presentation on the Natswitch instant payment system, which will be facilitated by our guest speaker today, and I'll allow him to introduce himself. The presentation will then be followed by a question and answer session. And lastly, we'll have a brief conclusion where we'll wrap up our conversation, as well as just share some closing remarks. I would like to request that you introduce yourself via the chat function and also tell us where you're joining from. We value your participation and encourage you to engage with us throughout the session. Please feel free to share your questions and comments as well, and we'll address them during the Q&A following the presentation. Additionally, we are pleased to offer interpretation services during this webinar to accommodate our diverse audience, and you may select your preferred language by clicking on the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen. Once again, thank you all for joining us. We're excited to explore the Natswitch payment system journey, and we look forward to a productive conversation. Without further ado, I would like to hand over to our guest speaker, who will introduce himself and take us through how the Natswitch journey started. Over to you, Kennedy. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And thank you for having me on this African Nenda Community of Practice webinar. My name is Kennedy Chande, and I'm from National Switch. I've been with National Switch since 2015. I'm privileged to have experienced all the integrations we have to date and being part of it. Thank you, Jacqueline. Over to you.
Thank you, Kennedy. You may proceed with the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. May you have the next slide, please? So in our presentation today, we have the National Switch, the governance, the challenges, and the implementation roadmap, also lessons sharing. Then it will be a vote of thanks to our partners. Next slide, please. So to set the stage rolling, National Switch is particularly focused on the retail payments. These are the low value and non-agent transfers and transactions. So for National Switch in Malawi, our core retail payments are focused on low value transactions. Thank you, please. Next page. So a story of the National Switch of Malawi. So basically, the National Switch of Malawi started as a discussion between the banks in Malawi and the central bank to facilitate interoperability and processing of digital payments within Malawi. So one of the key integrating factors of the National Switch is to facilitate digital payments and financial systems and ensuring that interoperability among service providers is offered within the country, and also to support government initiatives on financial inclusion. So the National Switch itself, it's also part of the DPI, in that it's facilitating the modernization of the digital economy for the country in order for the delivery of the public goods by the government. Next slide, please. So what was the goals for setting up the National Switch of Malawi? Some of them have been captured here. It was to facilitate financial inclusion, as I've mentioned. This is a very key agenda for the government of Malawi to reduce cost. So it was a cost effectiveness goal as well. Interoperability, financial stability and security, transparency, and our public accountability, promoting competitive and innovation. So these were some of the goals that resulted into that discussion that I've made between the financial institutions in Malawi and the central bank in order to set up the national switch of Malawi. Next slide, please. So what does it take to participate on the national switch of Malawi? So the national switch of Malawi is open to both licensed commercial banks and licensed non-banks payment service providers. We also have three categories of participation. We have the direct participants, which are the commercial banks. We have the indirect participants, which are non-bank payment service providers. And we also have aggregators and third-party processors. So you may ask, what is the differentiating factor between the direct participants and the indirect participants? So basically, the way the national switch is set up in Malawi, the direct participants, being the commercial banks, they have nostro accounts for settlement with the central bank, while the indirect participants, they are sponsored by the direct participants for settlement because they do not have nostro account for settlement at the central bank. Next slide, please. So what services are we currently offering on the national switch? On the card-based transactions, we have the ATM and the POS. On the fast payments, we have the account to account, wallet to account, account to wallet, and wallet to account. We also have cash in and cash out. This is over the counter. Over to you, Jacqueline. I'll pause here for now.
Thank you, Kennedy. We appreciate that that start where, at the beginning, the rationale involved promoting competition. You mentioned innovation, interoperability, as well as championing financial inclusion. So perhaps looking forward, could you share with us the role that regulation has played in the implementation of Natswitch, and particularly to, tell us the governance story? Over to you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. So in terms of governance, we do have a legal framework in Malawi. This is the payment system law in 2016. And we also have the regulatory framework, which is the Interoperability Directive 2017. These are the guiding frameworks that support the national switch. In terms of scheme rules, these are actually developed by the participants themselves. We do have subcommittees of the board. Mainly, the technical and operations committee of the board is responsible for developing scheme rules, which involve all the participants. They're part of, they have membership to that particular committee. And ownership for national switch, it is 100% owned by members. When I say members, I'm referring to the commercial banks and the 2 mobile money operators and 1 aggregator for MFIs and SACCOs. Of course, recently, the government of Malawi has also acquired equal shares into the national switch. So the national switch was funded by a soft loan from the World Bank to Malawi government, and oversight for the national switch is provided by the central bank, since the national switch is actually licensed under the Reserve Bank of Malawi. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Much appreciated, Kennedy. I think in moving forward, could you also highlight the challenges that were experienced in the Malawi market and solutions that being offered by Natswitch, and even basically the value proposition and how these solutions are tackling the challenges experienced?
Thank you, Jacqueline. So in terms of challenges, I have captured 7 here. We have the stakeholder alignment, high investment, security and cybersecurity, high running cost, adoption by consumers, the need to keep up with new technology and new developments, and vendor lock-in. So I'm just going to expand on one or two. So in terms of stakeholder alignment, in my previous comments, I made a comment that in terms of legal and regulatory framework, there are 2. One, that was the Interoperability Directive in 2017. That is the one that actually brought in all the stakeholders and also facilitates the interoperability in the country, and also engagement by the stakeholders in what is expected of the national switch. These were the solutions that we had in terms of stakeholder alignment. Of course, the buy-in as well by the Malawi government for the project as well. So in terms of high investment as a national switch, our approach is in terms of procurement of systems or hardware, a solution for us that has worked, we tend to approach the manufacturers instead of using third-party in-country suppliers, if the manufacturers themselves allow direct procurement. One more that I'm going to expand on, it's the security and the cybersecurity. So our setup for the current integration that we have here in Malawi, we did not allow any internet-facing interfaces. So our current participation, anyone that is integrating to the national switch, we use a VPN. This is fiber, and everyone's supposed to have dual links. And this is a backbone to the central bank's network. So it's a secure network. And that's how we have approached and provided solution to security in terms of cybersecurity. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Appreciated. Well, you earlier took us through the start of the journey where we got to appreciate the Natswitch origin story. Let's now turn into the implementation roadmap. What was the process for the key deployment factors, like, for instance, participant onboarding, the rollout of the use cases, as well as perhaps stakeholder engagement? Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. So in terms of roadmap for the national switch, the project started in 2014, which was the registration of the company and also the infrastructure that was being set up. That began in 2014. So in 2015, when I was joining the company, we started with ATM transactions as the company and the project took a phased approach. So in implementing such a switch of national interest and integrating various players, it's a very, very hectic work. So we took a phased approach. The first phase was card-based transactions. As you can see, in 2015, we started with the ATM and we went live with the ATM. In 2016, we went live with card-based again. This was POS transactions. Then moving forward in 2017, there were engagements in terms of scoping for the mobile money integrations and as well as integration of the non-bank stakeholders to the switch. 2018, we went live on mobile money integrations. This was wallet to account So it was a partial go live. In 2019, we completed the wallet to account leg. These were the mobile money transactions to banks. And there were also stakeholder engagements in terms of fast payments for account-to-account transactions. In 2020, stakeholder consultation on cash in and cash out. This is over-the-counter transactions. And in 2021, we went live with instant payment transaction. This is account to account, bank to bank, and instant. So in 2022, stakeholder engagements on national payment gateway. 2023, we completed the scope for national payment gateway. And now here in 2024, we have commenced our journey for implementation of the national payment gateway, which we believe it will also be a game changer in terms of the payment landscape in the country. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you. You've taken us through the rationale, which is the origin story of Natswitch, the governance structure. We've appreciated the challenges and the offerings, as well as the roadmap. What would you highlight as the lessons learned in the deployment of Natswitch, and particularly when it comes to the inclusivity of the instant payment systems?
Thank you, Jacqueline. So in terms of lessons learned and for sharing, I have the political will, and also support from the central bank is very vital. You've seen the interoperability directive that I indicated earlier. These are some of the initiatives that actually are supported by the central bank. Wider stakeholder consultation and engagement, financial literacy and public awareness, testing and piloting, governance, sustainability of operations, continuous monitoring, evaluation and improvements, inclusive from the word go. Since I'm technical person, I'm going to be biased and cover more on the testing and piloting. So in terms of testing and piloting, this is very key from what we've learned from the integrations that we've been doing since 2015. It is very key that the system integration testing cover all test cases and also the user acceptances. They are actually fully tested by the business personnel. And the piloting should actually be monitored to ensure that it satisfies the SIT and the user acceptance testing as well. So we've had situations where, due to regulations in the country, participants, they're running out of time, probably running out of time and attempting to circumvent penalties from the central bank because they're not going live, and testing probably not fully covered. Then when these certain institutions go live, you have issues. You would go back to the testing again. So in order to make sure that we don't have that in any future integrations, we are very strict in terms of SIT and UATs. We don't want to be going back and forth in terms of testing. It's time consuming and it's also costly for the participants as well as ourselves. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Kennedy. Just maybe to bring you back to the point on the sustainability of operations, could you elaborate how this has been achieved and what are some of the lessons that are emerging from that?
Thank you, Jacqueline. So in terms of sustainability of operations, as I mentioned earlier in one of my slides, the national switch was fully funded by the government of Malawi. It was a soft loan. So from 2015 onwards, as you saw in the roadmap, We only started with ATM and POS. These are not enough to cover the annual maintenance costs, which are very high, and also the depreciation on the equipment. So as a company, in terms of strategy, as I mentioned, we phased it. We reached a point where National Switch was not actually sustaining itself. But as we were adding more and more use cases and the volumes were growing, we reached a point where now National Switch is able to sustain itself and it's able to pay its bills and it's able to do upgrades as well. So this was our journey. It's a game of numbers and the use cases on the platform. The more the participants, the more volumes, and also our fees are low, very low. So that gives the participants room to also make sure that whatever they're passing to their customers, it's also very cost effective. Thank you.
Well said, and thank you. A big thank you again, Kennedy, for the insights shared. And without taking much time, I'd like to pass the mic to my colleague, Berry, who will introduce herself and take us through the next Q&A session. Over to you, Berry.
Actually, it's our colleague, Stella, who will
Okay, Stella.
take care of
Thank
it.
you. Sorry for that. Over to you, Stella.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Thank you so much, Kennedy, for the informative sessions. So we've had a few questions as you were presenting. The first question was from Silas, and the question was, does wallet to account mean wallet to bank? So I think one of you can answer. Does wallet to account mean wallet to bank too?
Thank you, Stella. If I got your question right, the question is, does wallet to account mean wallet to bank?
Yes, that's the question. Thank you.
Okay, fine. So on our platform, wallet to account does not necessarily mean wallet to bank, because remember, in one of my slides, I mentioned that we have banks and non-banks. So we do have fintechs as well on the platform. We have MFIs as well. So it could be a transaction originating from a wallet, which is a wallet for the mobile money operators, or the wallets as well for the other institutions that we have in the country. We have wallets that are not belonging to mobile money operators as well. So it's not a wallet to bank. It's an account. It can be an account at the MFI, an account at the bank, an account at one of the fintechs as well. But the originator is a wallet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Jacqueline, do you have anything to add? Or should I proceed to the next question?
No, thank you. Just proceed with the next question.
The second question was from Godfrey, and he was asking, are transactions instant on the Natswitch? Are transactions instant?
Thank you, Stella. I believe Godfrey is referring to the transfers, if I get it right.
Yes.
Okay,
Perhaps you can allow, sorry to chime in. Perhaps we allow Godfrey to present the question, maybe speak to the question, and then Kennedy, you can come in to answer. Thank you.
Jacqueline, unfortunately, the participants, they cannot unmute themselves, but he confirmed in the Q&A box that yes, he means that.
Thank you for that clarification. So the transfers, the first payments, the wallet to account, account to wallet, account to account, they are all instant. The only thing that is not instant is the settlement between the participant themselves, which is deferred. But the customers receive the funds instantly.
Okay, thank you. Godfrey,
Thank you.
Your question has been answered. Thank you, Kennedy. We have another question from Neil. So Neil is asking, on your journey to Natswitch, did you encounter any challenges where the financial institutions, and in this case, she's referring to banks, were pushing out the smaller players, the non-banks? And if the answer is yes, how did you ensure that everyone's interest was represented?
Thank you, Stella. On the national switch itself, we did not experience such a scenario because the original, as I've mentioned, it was first. Probably I did not cover this one. So it was first in terms of the integrations itself, card-based, then mobile money transaction, then the EFTs, then over the counter. It was also first in terms of the institutions. So the institutions that went in the first phase, they were the banks. So in the second phase, we had the mobile money operators. In the third phase, this is where we have the fintechs, the MFIs, in the third phase. So I hope that that addresses your question. Thank you.
Neil, I hope your question was addressed. We have one more question, and Nesrin will take over at this point.
Yes, so we have a question from Dr. Robert Ochola from Africa Nenda, who is asking, how did you ensure MNOs onboarded to achieve full interoperability?
Thank you, Stella. I hope it was Stella again. Okay, so how did we ensure MNOs integration for full interoperability? That's the question, right?
Yes, so how did you ensure MNOs are onboarded to achieve full interoperability?
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So as I've mentioned, we had phased approach. The MNOs were in the second phase, but also in that second phase, remember in my presentation, I mentioned there was a legal and regulatory frameworks that support the integrations for the national switch transactions. So in the regulatory framework, there is the interoperability directive. I hope that you are able to get this particular directive from our central bank website. It does guide how players and payment systems in the country are supposed to interoperate. And the facilitator is a national switch. I think you should consider reviewing this particular interoperability directive. So it does guide that the mobile money operators, they should integrate to the national switch. Thank you.
Thank you, Kennedy. We have a question from Charlie. So he's asking, what about the integration of added value services such as bills payment into the payment gateway? I'm not sure what he's referring to in this case. Yeah. The integration of added value services such as bills payment into the e-payment gateway.
Thank you, Stella. So in our scope for the National Payment Gateway, these particular use cases and added services are scoped in, and they will be available once the National Payment Gateway project goes live. As I mentioned, we are anticipating that it will go live in first half 2025. It was supposed to go live this year around this time, but it has been delayed. So we are hoping that first half next year, it will go live, and the bill payments and the particular added value services that have been indicated on this question will be available and unveiled on the national switch. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't think we have any more questions. If you have a question and you'd like to ask, please lift your hand. If not, I'll give the floor to Jacqueline. Thank you. Thank you, Kennedy. Oh, we have a question.
I think I see more questions.
Yes.
Stella, yes.
Yeah. Hawas, I can see your hand is lifted. Have you posted your question?
Yes, please. Participants can now unmute themselves and ask the questions directly. Hawas, please, if you want to unmute yourself, and then we have a hand risen by Pam, if you want to introduce yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you and good evening. My question is actually typed in the Q&A box, and I was asking, how do participants pay for the service they consume? Do we charge a percentage of the value, 1%, 2%, like, the card fee, or is it a flat fee per transaction? Or do they just pay a subscription fee like quarterly, annually, that allows them to use the service? So what's the billing model? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So we have two types of participants in the national switch. We have the participants, which are also shareholders. Then we have participants which are not shareholders. So the participants that are shareholders, they pay the joining fee during their integration to the national switch. The participants that are not shareholders, they also pay the joining fee. But on the national switch itself, we also have members that we are hosting directly on the national switch. These pay hosting fees to the national switch. Then we have members who have their own switches. They do not pay hosting fees to the national switch because they have their own switches. Now, in terms of the fee splitting, so we have a fee model whereby we share the transaction three-way. So we have the sending institution, for example, for the first payment, we have the sending institution, national switch, and the receiving institution. So there's a percentage for each particular participant in that transaction, and the fee is flat. So that's how we have it modeled on the national switch. It's also similar to the card-based transactions, where you have the acquiring institution, national switch, and the issuer institution. And the fee is also split three ways, and it's also a flat fee. And the fees are very low. Thank you.
Thank you, Kennedy. We have another question. Pam, please go ahead. And then God, you can go next. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Stella. Thank you, Kennedy and Jacqueline, for the presentations. Very, very informative. Mine is a small question on the new Data Protection Act in Malawi. What are some of the technical or otherwise safeguards, Kennedy, that you envision might happen to Natswitch, or Natswitch will take these safeguards to ensure that there is compliance with the Data Protection Act?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think I will not be able to cover this one comprehensively, but we do have internally resources that are looking into that, to ensure that the national switch is complying to those particular acts. I hope that
Yeah, that's clear enough. That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Kennedy. Thanks a lot for sharing this information. I just wanted to check in terms of the fee model, since you indicated that they are direct partners and they're indirect partners. So I'm just checking if the fee you charge is equitable across all of them, and you don't have a situation where indirect members are charging additional fee to indirect members for using their Vostro accounts. That's the first question. The second question is around remittances. To say, is this the platform that centralizes all remittances in and out of Malawi? Or do you have other remittance platforms that you use? Thank you.
Thank you, Godfrey. So to answer your first question, the fee is flat. It does not depend on the type of institution, direct or indirect. For instance, on the mobile money transactions, the fee is flat. I think it's 120 kwacha. It's a flat fee, both for wallet to account and account to wallet. It's a flat fee. It does not depend on participation. So the second question was related to the regional transfers. Currently, the National Switch of Malawi has not integrated to the regional payment systems yet, but we are engaging. We are at an advanced stage with some of the regional payment systems as well, so which we should be able to offer the regional transfers as well. Thank you.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And by the regional payment system, you're referring to the SADC payment system and the COMESA?
I believe there are engagements with several regional payment systems. SADC it's one of
Kennedy, you unmuted yourself. Just give me you muted yourself.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So SADC, as you've mentioned, Godfrey is one of them.
Yeah.
And also there are other African payment systems. You know, there's the COMESA, there's SIIPS. These are all that we are currently engaging. So we should be able to offer regional and also cross-African payment transfers as well.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Cheers, thanks.
Bonjour. If anyone has a question, please lift your hand. If not, give the floor to Jacqueline. Thank you, Kennedy. Thank you, everyone. Please ask the question.
Thank you, Stella. Thanks, Kennedy, for that Q&A, and thanks everybody for the interactions. As we come to the conclusion of today's webinar, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to each of you for joining us and making this a good and interactive session. We hope you found the case study on Natswitch to be informative and thought-provoking. A special thank you to Kennedy, of course, to shed some light on Natswitch. We have a deep understanding of the rationale and the initiative in general. We'd like to also acknowledge the importance of the engagements today. Your active participation is invaluable as always, and it helps us drive richer dialogue and explore more in terms of instant payment systems. Please feel free to reach out if you have any more questions and need further information. We're always here to support your understanding and exploration of this exciting theme, which is IPS, and how to make instant payment systems inclusive. And before we sign off, I encourage you to stay connected with us for future webinars and updates in this series and beyond. We're looking forward to the next one. I think there's somebody's hand is up.
Yes, Jacqueline, this is Sabine. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, Sabine.
I just thought it was also a good opportunity to maybe update the participant on this call on the progress we are making on the SIIPS 2024 report. Maybe you want to share something?
Yeah, I was going to mention that, they should watch out for communications in terms of the details. Currently, we are in the last stages of finalizing the report, which will be out later in November. So I was going to say that. Thank you, Sabine. Yeah, so the next webinar will be on the National Financial Switch, NFS in Zambia, and it's scheduled for August 22nd at 4 p.m. East African time or 3 p.m. Central African time as today. Please mark your calendars for November 20th, 2024. As mentioned, we are thrilled to be releasing our State of Inclusive Instant Payment Systems in Africa Report 2024, as have been highlighted. And also just maybe to reiterate, we are in the final stages of preparing the report. There'll be more case studies in this year's report as well. You won't want to miss it, so keep an eye on social media channels and our website for more details soon from now. Thank you once again for your time and participation. We look forward to seeing you at our future convenings. Bye for now, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.